just give him the opportunity to speak, to give us updates. And then what we'd like to do at the end of the session, if we have time for questions, and we'll do that. So Delegate Adams, I will turn it over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you again for this chamber event. It's great to have this opportunity to give a post-legislative update. It's always good to be with my colleague, Delegate Marshall. I'm sorry, Delegate Williams couldn't be here. Good to see you, Addison. And the representative from Congressman Griffith's office. Good to see you. Thank you. And thank you to all of the members of the chamber for all you do for our economy, Southside Virginia, and for your community involvement. You know, this year was the second of the two-year term for members of the House of Delegates. So this was the second of the biannual budget, second year of the biannual budget in the term that we're in at the Assembly, which means that's, you know, usually referred to as the short session. But of course, almost every discipline is touched. Bills are related, are introduced to almost every conceivable issue you can imagine. And so we still had, hundreds of bills to consider within our respective committees. And, from my standpoint, serving as the vice chairman of the Courts of Justice Committee, a lot of bills go through there. I was chairman of the Criminal Law Subcommittee, which hears as many bills as any full committee. And so there's a lot of legislation that we review, have a say in. And of course, it was my privilege to serve as part of the governing majority with my colleagues, Delegate Marshall, Delegate Williams, in the House of Delegates. Now, of course, the political dynamic, as many of you know, is that the state Senate, there is a Democrat majority there. But and so, a lot of what you might say are the large philosophical issues, priorities of one house may not make it through the other house. But when you saw a standstill on some of those bills, that's usually what accounted for that, is the divided government. But of course, we also have the dynamic of Governor Youngkin in office with his gubernatorial agenda, Attorney General Miyares with his legislative priorities, and that was something that, in comparison to previous terms where I've served and represented our region, have not had the opportunity to really work hand in hand with the executive officials the way we did this past time. And so it was a real privilege to be able to work with the governor, work with the attorney general on some of their priorities. Both leaders had reached out to me for assistance in passing legislation earlier this year, and I'm pleased to say that we were pretty effective in some of those priorities. So I have a couple that I wanted to highlight with you here today. One has to do with the Virginia Employment Commission. So as many of the members on this call know, during the pandemic, the VEC was overwhelmed by the sheer number of cases it was required to process during the unprecedented period of lockdowns and business closings that were forced by then Governor Northam's executive orders. Now, during this time, I can tell you, and I'm sure Delegate Marshall and Delegate Williams can attest to this, our local offices fielded calls from scores of constituents seeking help and having their claims processed. Under Governor Youngkin's administration, priority has been placed on adjudicating that backlog. And in the course of this effort, the commissioner of the VEC identified areas of improvement for prosecuting the rampant fraud that simultaneously occurred during the pandemic. So I introduced two bills that were passed into law and those will help rectify the VEC's inability to readily access financial records vital to the identification of perpetrators of fraud. They do this by amending the duties and powers of the commissioner to authorize investigators to issue subpoenas for witnesses and documents from banks. The venue for prosecutions is also expanded by the legislation and allows prosecutions by Commonwealth's attorney's offices across the Commonwealth to deal with it, as well as the Office of the Attorney General. So, hopefully we'll see some improvement for the cases that are deserving and those who are truly in need in light of this new effort to combat fraud. Another bill I'd like to highlight is a measure related to transportation funding. Now, this is something I think of particular interest to our area in Southside Virginia. It was priority legislation for Governor Youngkin, and having passed both bodies, it's now been signed into law by the governor. This is House Bill 2302, and it has to do with the Transportation Opportunity Fund. The governor may now direct funds to the Commonwealth Transportation Board for projects that are determined to be necessary to support major economic development initiatives or to enhance the economic development opportunities for the Commonwealth's transportation programs. The bill authorized the governor to use the funds to enhance existing projects as well. Furthermore, it allows the use of grants and revolving loans for property acquisition and new or improved infrastructure to support economic development opportunities via transportation programs. Currently, appropriations on these bases are not allowed. This is new executive flexibility that will help to attract jobs and industry with improved infrastructure, and it follows what many of the members on this call already know are important investments that were announced by the governor earlier this year relating to the Virginia Business Ready Sites program. 2 of the top 10 awardees from that announcement are here in Southside Virginia: the Commonwealth Crossing Business Park in Henry County and the Southern Virginia mega site at Berry Hill in Pittsylvania County. With respect, going back to the bill, though, with this new funding stream or economic development focus, this follows a conversation that Delegate Marshall, Delegate Williams, and I had with the Secretary of Transportation last summer. We arranged a meeting to talk about the Southern Connector, about some of our concerns with projects down here. And, one of the issues that was raised by the Secretary was that he needs a new, that they were really looking for a new bucket, you might say, of funding that the governor would have access to. And by way of example, I remember asking if, let's say we had a major employer who was ready to make an investment in our area, and they were comparing our site to another state. And they said, we're ready to come to where you are, but we need these transportation changes to, we need a project on this road in this area. We asked the Secretary, well, what would you say to that employer? And he said, well, we would tell them that there's a process in place. You need to put in an application. It's probably likely to take several years to get the approval we need. This allows the governor to take immediate action and put dollars on a project so that we don't lose a potential opportunity like that in the future. And so I was really pleased to see that made it through and has been signed into law. There's one more bill that I wanted that I'll bring up today, And this one, you know, I don't know how many health professionals we have on the call today, but this one relates to the Virginia Department of Health. I don't serve on the health committee, but all across the rural district that I serve, I hear people talk about the problem of tick bites. Okay, and this has come up in Farm Bureau meetings. I remember it was mentioned at a Henry County Farm Bureau meeting a year or so ago, that we're seeing both problems with cattle and some serious losses that have come from tech infestations there, but also personally with the rise of additional syndromes over the past several years that are carried by ticks that affect humans, particularly. Many people know about the common red meat allergy. You know, what I've learned is that there's really not a way to track these new syndromes. Ticks transmit bacterial and viral infections to people and cattle. As I say, it poses individual and agricultural risk. There's limited surveillance or data collection in our state as to the various type of invasive ticks and pathogens now afflicting Virginians. Experts have complained of a lack of resources to effectively diagnose and treat victims of those diseases. So the bill that I introduced will begin to take action to remedy this public health challenge by directing the Department of Health to convene a work group to study and make recommendations to the General Assembly regarding which strategies to implement for the recognition, treatment, and prevention of the spread of ticks and the diseases they carry. It's my understanding that the Commonwealth of Virginia hasn't had a focus on this area of health since around 2010 to 2011, when we had a real epidemic with Lyme disease at that time. But now, with these new syndromes that are popping up, hopefully this will give us some solutions going forward from a health standpoint. So those are three areas that I was heavily involved in this year, in addition to the other work that I've done. You know, I'll tell you, I think it was a pretty effective year, despite the divided government we have in terms of a lot of practical issues, and what you might call good governance. You know, there's some successes like this to point to. In my particular situation, it was particularly effective. I think 100% of the bills that I introduced in the House did pass the House. Approximately half of those also passed the Senate. So, you know, a lot of work was done in a short amount of time that I think benefited the people, and I was grateful for that. But what I would say overall to all of you who are you know listening, please, as always, know that my door is always open. You know, if you have other ideas or thoughts about the session or upcoming issues and where we are, please don't hesitate to call me. I know that's true with my colleagues who are on the call with us. I will say, for the most part, all of our work is done. What remains is a conference committee report on the budget bills. And I know Danny will speak to that more, but I'm hopeful that an agreement will be reached by those conferees soon. And so we may have a short special session to address that, but otherwise, I think the work of this assembly is for the most part finished. Anyway, thank you again for having me, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Adams, and we certainly appreciate the work that you do on behalf of our community. I'd like now to ask Delegate Marshall if he would like to give us an update, but before he starts, I do want to take a minute to recognize him. As many of you know, this is his last year serving this part of our community, and so Delegate Marshall, we just want to thank you for all the work that you've done on our behalf, and thank you, of course, for our service, for your service to the Martinsville and Henry County area. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you for saying that. It's been a real pleasure to serve the Henry County part that I have had since I was first sworn in. It made a lot of friends there that will still stay friends, and anything I could do to help because I think that if we're all in one community, I see if I'm driving westbound on 58 early in the morning or eastbound in late in the afternoon, I see a lot of cars going both ways. And so, the citizens drive both ways to get those jobs. And so if we create jobs in Henry County, citizens in Pittsylvania and Danville will drive over and vice versa. So we just need to, all work together to make sure that we all succeed. So let me talk a little bit about, Les brought up about the budget. So I was fortunate to be appointed to the Appropriations Committee a couple of years ago. And there are 7 subcommittees, and they put me on 4 of them. And I chair the Commerce, Agriculture, and Natural Resources subcommittee. And so there's a lot of meetings. And so let me just clarify to start with, because I hear this from citizens. They see what's happening in Washington right now about a budget. As Les mentioned before, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that last year we approved a 2-year budget. So the budget in Virginia will go until June 30th of next year. And so what we take up this year are budget amendments. And the reason that has happened is that if economy goes south and we have to make cuts, then that is what happens. Luckily, it went the other way. The economy is still strong, and so we have to, in Virginia, we have to have a balanced budget. I hope our friends in Washington would learn that we have to balance our checkbook in Virginia. So where we are right now is that the revenue is really strong. The governor, just like last year, what he wants to do is to send part of that overpayment, if you want to call it that, which it is, in taxes. He wants to send that back to Virginia taxpayers, or underlying taxpayers. You got to be a taxpayer to get this money, and hopefully that will happen. And so that's one of the stumbling blocks right now that we haven't approved a budget. But even in the budget that we approved in the House, that and the Senate has agreed to this. It's like we're going to have teachers' raises this year. And just to clarify, teachers are not state employees. The almost 45% of the state budget goes to K through 12, across the Commonwealth. And it's based on what is called the ability to pay. And in Virginia, we have this formula that looked like NASA came up with. It's called composite index. And this composite index looks at, again, the ability to pay. So the last time I looked at the number last fall, when it was updated, is let's just take Fairfax County and Loudoun County. Of the 5 richest counties in the state of, in the United States, 2 of them are in Virginia. And no news alert, that's not Henry County and Pennsylvania County. It's Northern Virginia, 2 counties. They have an average household income of about $145,000. Just think about that. That's about $100,000 more than we have here. So that is related back to K through 12 funding. So, for example, Loudoun County gets about $2,500 per student for K through 12 because of that high income, and they, high average house sale in Northern Virginia, $750,000. But here we get about $6,000 to $6,500 per student based on that composite index. And so we are a beneficiary of that to a certain degree. And it's based on that formula changes every year. So that's one of the things that we have to keep looking for, is to make sure that that rural Virginia is served. Some of the colleagues in Northern Virginia wants to change that formula back to something like based it on the number of students in schools. If we do, we lose and they win, and we don't need to do that. So the rainy day fund, you've heard about that. The revenue in the last few years has been so strong. The rainy day fund is completely full. We have set at our limit. In fact, we started another rainy day fund, and that is also exceeding close to the limit of what we're doing. Virginia still has a AAA bond rating. And it's only one of about a handful of states in the U.S. that has a AAA bond rating. And the reason that's expensive is necessary for us in our part of the state is that so if the localities wants to borrow money, they can borrow money at that AAA bond rating, and they get a lower interest rate. So it helps the localities get a lower rate. So I want to talk to you a little bit about something that you may have seen that Delegate Adams or I did not vote for, and I don't think Wren was in the General Assembly at this time, is something called the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And that was passed in 2020. And what that does, it moves Virginia to a what is called a carbon-free and the date it moves around a little bit, but it's about 2045. And what that means is that Virginia would produce all its electricity, no carbon. And what no carbon means is no coal-fired plants, no natural gas plants. It would all have to be solar or either offshore wind. And as you have seen in our backyards, we have a lot of solar. I'm not quite sure how many acres Henry County has. Pittsylvania County has about 6,000 acres solar that's already in the ground or either already that's already permitted. If you go to our East Charlotte County, the last number I heard, they got close to 15,000 acres. Now, where's all the electricity going to? Well, it's not coming, so much to us. It's going to Northern Virginia because of the data centers up there are requiring clean energy. So that's what you will see in the future. The other thing is electric cars that they want us to go to, and this bill passed, and it's still law, that we will have electric cars by 2035. I asked one of the engineers from AEP, I said, if all the cars today were electric, how much solar would we have to have? And he came back to me and he says, it would be 10% of all the land area in the state of Virginia would have to be solar. So you just think about that 10%. Well, I don't think we're going to put solar at the Capitol on those. So it's going to be a whole lot of areas that won't have solar, but then we'll have solar. But the real area is that it's just not feasible that that's going to happen. So even if it does happen, if the other side of the aisle keeps control of the Senate, what's going to happen is you're going to have to import electricity. And I mentioned this to our friends across the aisle, the Democrats, and said, so that electricity, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from West Virginia. How does West Virginia produce this electricity? Coal and natural gas. Well, isn't that a little bit of an irony that, we don't want to do it here, but we're going to import it in? So anyway, that's another issue. The other real head scratcher here is in that bill that, again, Les Adams and I voted against, and it was a party line vote, that will let, you may have seen something in the news about this, that requires Virginia to basically adopt and any regulations on carbon, and especially like cars, et cetera, on California. So whatever California adopts, we do not have a vote on that. It just automatically is the law of Virginia. And you saw that just recently that California has banned diesel-powered trucks, buses, and et cetera, by 2030. And so if we don't get that thing changed, that's what's going to happen here in Virginia. And so you just think about that, how that would your cost of business would go up. So we hopefully, the reason what this election this November is so daggone important is we've got to get control and get some sanity and get some common sense back into the General Assembly, and to get this bill, taken apart and, get back to sanity so that we can, use all of the above. So one of the bills that I put in is about small modular reactors. And I had the opportunity and really neat experience this past summer to go to the shipyards where they build these massive, nuclear powered submarines and aircraft carriers. And so they were building a new aircraft carrier there, and they were dismantling the first aircraft carrier that was powered by nuclear. And that boat was 50 years old. And when I say boat, just think it's the size of, I think it was stretched from city limits to city limits of Marginal. But the small modular reactors are probably going to be on the market in the next decade. And once you power these things up, they sit there and just produce electricity for 50 years. And so you have a large capital expense to start with, but once you put them in online, they sit there and produce electricity for for decades upon decades at a stable rate that goes forward. And so I put a bill in, passed the House, a little bit of a problem, but when it went to the Senate, it did not pass, and this was like at the on the last day, and we just couldn't get it through. So I'll bring that bill back because I think that it not only tax base for our areas but also for our energy costs. It will help us, bring some flat electricity rates to the state of Virginia. I want to mention a little bit about Berry Hill, next door, which is on the western side of Pittsylvania County and the, right at the Henry County line. It's 3,500 acres of land, and I'm sure you have seen in the press that we have come in second a couple of times. And you don't get a trophy for coming in second in this, but Kia last January of last year, February of last year, looked at that site. It was 8,000 jobs at that site that they were going to put there at the site at Berry Hill. But the other real curveball was another 9,000 jobs that was going to go within a 45-minute radius. And so Commonwealth Crossing would have had, some of the suppliers up in Franklin County would have had some of the suppliers back over in northern Pennsylvania County. So we've had a couple of those companies that look at us, and we have come in close a couple of times, but we still have companies looking. So it's not a matter of, it's just a matter of not if, it's just a matter of when. So bills that I put in this year is, at the request of the Virginia State Police, a workers' comp bill. So when a state policeman goes into a home that is producing meth, stuff is very harsh on the body, and so that will let them collect workers' comp where they can't do that today. I also put in a bill about housing. I serve on a group called Virginia Housing Commission outside of session. And last August, we had one of the economists from the Virginia Realtors. A couple of the eye-opening things, I mentioned this before. Again, the average house sale in Northern Virginia is $750,000. Just think about that for a minute. In Danville, you could buy a whole block for $750,000. But the issue, one of the main things was that at that time it was only a 9-month supply of residential building lots in the state. That number is going to move, plus or minus some. And so Danville alone has 1,000 jobs. Danville, Pennsylvania County has 1,000 jobs already announced that we don't have houses for. And so it's not just Danville, it's other areas. And so what I put in is, and I sent it to Housing Commission for a study, and we've already had one meeting, having another one in July, about to allow IDAs to use kind of the same method that they do when they build industrial parks to look at building residential. I know in my part in Danville, Pennsylvania County, we had at one time we had a whole lot of residential builders that would go out and borrow money to buy a piece of property, develop that land, etc. We don't have those anymore. So the same idea is the reason when we go and build industrial parks is so that that land is ready for when that company comes in. Now, I'm a property rights person. I've told the county manager of Pennsylvania and city of Danville that this idea is not for the city of Danville. And I'll tell Mr. Wagner also that not for Henry County to get into the land selling business to start selling lots of building houses. But what we want is just have those things shovel ready so that when that developer needs to build houses, he can do so. So when that company comes in, we can be ready for them. Talk to the folks at Virginia Economic Development Partnership, Jason Akubi, about this, and he says that is an issue as far as economic development that maybe it's going to put the state of Virginia a little bit ahead of where other states are not doing this right now. So, and housing is an issue throughout the U.S. So I'll we yield to any questions that you have at a later time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate Marshall. And again, we appreciate your service to our community. Now I want to turn it over to Mr. Addison Merriman, who is representing Delegate Wren Williams. So, Mr. Merriman, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So Addison Merriman, I'm Wren Williams legislative aide for those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. Wren wishes that he could be with you this morning. Unfortunately, he's dealing with sort of an emergency legal situation for a client, and he's traveling for that, so is unable to join us. Our thanks to Delegate Marshall and Delegate Adams for giving such a great overview of where things stand right now in Richmond. So I'll just touch on a few things that Delegate Williams has been working on. Wren introduced 15 bills this session, of which 7 passed the House and Senate and were signed by the governor into law. He sits on the Public Safety Courts and Privileges and Elections Committees. And so I'll touch on 2 of the bills that I think are going to be, relevant for the Henry Martinsville area. One of those is a racketeering bill. A lot of business owners in Henry County and Martinsville had reached out to us about catalytic converter thefts, and that this is a major concern for any businesses that had trucks sitting in a parking lot or business vehicles that were getting hit by these catalytic converter theft rings. People just coming in, sawing off catalytic converters in the dead of night or even in daylight in other areas of the state. And the big problem is that during the 2020 to 2021 session, the limits of larceny, or the thresholds for grand larceny, were increased to about I believe it's $900 or $1,000. And so these catalytic converters, when they're sawed off a vehicle, they're only worth about $200 or $300 in precious metals once they're scrapped. But they cost another $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to replace. And so this is it's a grossly inefficient theft, but it's also very damaging to our businesses and our law enforcement and ability to crack down on these thefts and protect the property of our business owners has really been hampered by these legal changes under the Democrat government in 2020 and 2021. So one of the bills that Delegate Williams brought for the Attorney General, and we're very glad has passed into law, basically allows rings of organized crime, racketeering. Basically, the penalties are significantly heightened to, I believe, is it a class 2 felony, so that our prosecutors, our law enforcement, are able to prosecute these rings. This will also affect organized crime going after robbing Walgreens or pharmacies or department stores that we've seen in some of our major cities. So we're looking forward to that going into effect in July, and just or the ability of our sheriff's offices to protect our business owners' property. Another bill that Delegate Williams brought was regarding judicial misconduct, which basically makes if a judge has been disciplined due to misconduct, that's now out in public. So this is one of a part of Williams' agenda to basically bring a lot of our criminal justice system into the light, whether it's the parole board or also the conduct of judges. If there's any wrongdoing, then that should be public. It shouldn't, because there's so much entrusted to our justice system as far as handling crime and protecting the rights and property of law-abiding citizens. So we want to make sure that is open. I'll also touch briefly on budget amendments that Delegate Williams entered and advocated for Henry County and Martinsville this session. And we're very thankful to Administrator Dale Wagner for all of his help. We were talking with him extensively while we were in Richmond on different needs of Henry County and how we could advocate for those in the budget. And so we advocated, we put in budget amendments for the Bassett Community Center, for funding to complete the Dick and Willie Passage Trail, as well as the development of park space, and also budget to begin construction on the Southern Connector. As Delegate Adams and Delegate Marshall have touched on, right now the budget hasn't been handled yet. That's yet to be. We're hopeful that some of these items will make it into the budget, but if not, we're going to continue to advocate for them. Let's see. And I believe that's it, but I'll be around for questions on particulars at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
And then now I want to turn it over to Mr. John Hess, who is here representing Congressman Morgan Griffith. So Mr. Hess, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you guys very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. My name is Josh Hess. I'm the district director for Congressman Morgan Griffith. He sends his regrets that he could not participate in this Zoom call. He's in Washington, D.C. right now. They have a full agenda today of votes and committee hearings. But he did want to send his regrets, and thanks you guys for always inviting him and putting this on. I'll be super brief because I want to allow for questions for Delegate Adams and Delegate Marshall and Addison after a very busy legislative session that they had in Richmond. So I'm going to be super quick, but I did want to highlight a few things. First, as many of you know, Congressman Griffith has represented Henry County, well, part of Henry County and the city of Martinsville since he was first elected. Due to redistricting this year, we've now picked up all of Henry County. The 9th district is now the largest congressional district in the state of Virginia, and also larger than 9 other states. It's about 10,100 square miles. And so it's large. It spans all the way out from Big Island over in Bedford County down to the Cumberland Gap in Lee County. So we have 23 counties and 5 independent cities. So we're trying to be seen everywhere and be a presence for everybody is something that's important to Congressman Griffith when he's not in Washington, D.C. Another thing that I wanted to highlight is his new committee assignments this year. Since he's been in Congress, he's been on the Energy and Commerce Committee. He's also been on the subcommittees of Energy, Health, and Oversight and Investigation. This year, he remains on all of those committees. The only thing that's changed is he is now the chair of Energy and Commerce Subcommittee of Oversight and Investigation. And as he likes to say, as a recovering attorney, what more could you possibly want? You get subpoena power, you get to put witnesses under oath, and you get to decide whether or not you're badgering the witness. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So he's very excited about that. They've had a slew of hearings already in this new 118th Congress. And they're having some field hearings as well. A new committee that he's been added to for the 118th Congress is the House Administration Committee. And as a rules guy and someone interested in the processes of how Washington works and how that place operates, Congressman Griffith is excited to be on that committee. One of the things that they also oversee on House admin is election or federal elections. So they've already held some hearings on that and working to shore up some of the issues that we've experienced with federal elections. Henry County and Martinsville specific, this year Congressman Griffith was able to submit 15 community project funding requests. Essentially what that is an earmark. Several years ago, under different leadership, the House of Representatives brought the earmarks back in the form of community project funding. This year, Congressman Griffith again submitted 15 out of 36 requests that the office received. So I want to thank Dale Wagner and his team and the county as a whole for putting together a good package. And Congressman Griffith submitted a $2.5 million request for the Beaver Creek Extension Drive project at the Patriot Center Industrial Park. That I think will fully fund that project. If not, it will be pretty close. And right now that request sits with House Appropriations Committee. It's out of our control, so hopefully we'll see that in the House proposed budget, hopefully here in the next few months. That is the updates that I have. I told you that I would be short and sweet. I appreciate you guys inviting me again. And thank you for your time today. Thanks for all the work that the chamber does.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for joining us as well. Now we do have some time for questions. And so I want to turn it over to anyone, first the folks who are here in the room with us. Anyone that's on Zoom, if you'd like, you can unmute yourself to ask a question, or if you want to, you can put your question in the chat and we'll make sure it gets answered. Okay, so let's start. Who wants to ask the first question? Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Reeves. I have the dubious honor of being the treasurer of the Blue Ridge Regional Airport Authority. And I was particularly interested in the remarks from Delegate Adams about the Transportation Opportunity Fund. Our short-term 5-year development plan at the Blue Ridge Airport is for the runway extension, which is pretty much funded by the state and the federal government, the new terminal, and really interested in funding for 2 new corporate hangars. We have some money. We're in the current design and planning phase for those 2 corporate hangars. And so we're really interested in this Transportation Opportunity Fund. Delegate Adams, are you still on this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We may be knocking on your door soon. There are at least 5 corporate $3 to $5 million aircraft sitting on the tarmac at Lynchburg that are looking for corporate hangars. We think we can get at least 2 of those here in Martinsville, Henry County, and Patrick County, which would be a real boon to the what I call the gateway to Henry and Patrick County. So Delegate Adams, we may be knocking on your door soon to see what we can do about the Transportation Opportunity Fund.
Happy to help and argue on any of our constituents' behalf when those type of projects come up.
And if I could add, I assume that tax base then would move from Lynchburg to Henry County. So that's got to be additional revenue for the locality.
That's correct. Absolutely correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Or Sharon, I don't know if I'm not technologically savvy enough to look at the chat on my phone and do this at the same time.
Yeah, you got one in the chat.
Okay. Do you see one in the chat for now? For Sharon? While we pull that up, does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask? If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Danny, I can't see the one in the chat. Do you mind? Do you mind sharing the question with us, please?
Well, I just see that it says chat, and up in the right-hand corner of the chat, it says one. So I assume it's one person asking the question, but let me see. I can't, I'm using my daughter's computer. And I don't want to screw it up, and because I'll never live that down. So I cannot get that question up.
It's probably where I tried to join in the chat so I could glance at it on my phone. Apologize for that. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask?
This is Eric Phillips. I don't have a question. I'd like to make one comment.
Sure.
I think because of redistricting, Danny, this may be your last hoorah with the chamber. Would that be accurate?
Well, and you know, I don't know about the last hurrah, but you know, I still represent the 14th district, which is the district I've always had until I raise my right hand next January. So, you know, y'all are stuck with me until you know, early January of next year.
Well, yeah, obviously that's what I meant. I just wanted to say, you know, if there's not another one of these events where you're part of, how much we appreciate all you've done for this whole region, this area. And Martinsville and Henry County in particular, as you've served us all these years. And again, I know your heart is for the region and for this area, and I'm sure you'll continue to help us in any way you can. But I just want to say thank you for all you've done for us, you know, while you continue to serve. But as redistricting happens, we sure hate to lose you.
Well, and I hate to lose, you know, y'all, Eric, but again, I said this earlier, and I said again, is that, you know, I think we are, you know, the only people who know where the city and the county lines are government officials. The citizens don't know where those lines are. They don't pay any attention to those lines. They cross back and forth all the time, you know, for jobs, for, you know, for recreation or anything. So, I mean, I think that we need to, you know, the more we can work together, the stronger we'll be.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to ask a question? I have a couple questions just that as a group we had put together just based on comments and other feedback that we've gotten from our members. And so I'll just ask a couple of these and I will let whoever would like to start make a comment. First question that we've got is immigration increases the supply of labor, and many of our business and industry leaders feel that if there were better immigration policies, we would not be experiencing the labor shortage to the degree that we are. And so the question is, what is happening in Richmond to address that issue?
Well, that is more of a federal issue than it is a state issue. You know, when we talk about immigration from across the border, we're not talking about the people from North Carolina coming across. It's people from Mexico. So we might want to yield to the congressman's office about that. You know, if you look at the numbers that have come across the border, the reported numbers come across, it's kind of mind-boggling how many folks have come across there. And especially we taxpayers are now having to put them in hotels across the U.S. And so one of the things, I'll ramble here a second, is that the state of Virginia, you know, you see the number comes out all the time about the unemployment rate. The thing that you don't see them say a lot is something called the participation rate. And the participation rate means is how many people who can work are actually working. And the last number I saw, the governor sent out a press release saying that the participation rate went up. We went from 68.2% to 68.4%. Well, that's great. But do the reverse math. How many people are sitting at home, not working? I think out in Utah, the participation rate is close to 80%. And so I know Mr. Frith back there and everybody else is looking for people to work. And so it's not just a matter of getting, the immigrants to work. It's about getting the U.S. citizens to work also. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you, Delegate Marshall. Would anybody else like to comment on that?
Yes, certainly. I'll jump in real quick, and I don't want to misrepresent Congressman Griffith's position. So I'll be brief in the sense that there's obviously immigration reform that's needed within this country. And several years ago, under Congressman Bob Goodlatte, several pieces of legislation passed the House of Representatives. Congressman Griffith calls them Goodlatte 1 and Goodlatte 2. And it was almost merit-based in a sense, or a needs-based, based on what type of profession or what type of occupation that you're looking for and what we need here in this country. I'm not going to say that is what Congressman Griffith is looking for now. There's obviously reform that's needed to be done. He does not sit on the committee of jurisdiction for that. It's odd the way that the committees are broken down, because in his oversight role on energy and commerce, they have jurisdiction over ORR, which is where the immigrant children come into and then are dispersed to different houses or families, or however that works once they come across. But immigration as a whole, unless it's drug or children related, the committee does not have jurisdiction. I'm happy to get you more info on that. Please reach out to our office, reach out to me, and happy to get you more information on his particular views as it relates to workforce here in the Commonwealth.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Any other questions? I will ask, just because it's a topic for us and something that we discuss often, and look at the Southern Connector project. And so curious if there are any updates there on that project, looking particularly to Delegate Adams and Delegate Marshall.
Well, and Delegate Marshall, if you don't mind, I'll just jump in right here. Obviously this is something that we have really been pushing for some attention on that roadway, to see that this becomes a priority and stays before the Commonwealth Transportation Board. The exact, way of getting it done doesn't matter so much, that it just gets done. And, in terms of, the budget proposals that were introduced, I know, Delegate Williams had one. I'm not sure that those have made it into the final conference report that we have. Looking for something, something direct like that. But it's possible down the road we may have something beyond what the CTB is doing. It's fighting over transportation dollars is always a big part of our work up there.
Thanks.
And so what I'd like to add to, and I know that Mr. Frith and I've talked about this before, is our part of the state has something a little different, and that's 58 money. And that was done way back before my time, in the General Assembly. And there is a ceiling on how much money can be borrowed for 58 improvements. And so, and they will borrow X amount of dollars to do a project. And so that stretches all the way from, from the western part of 58 all the way across to the eastern part. So that money has been like put the bypass around Danville, and put the bypass around Marshall. So that money, we need to keep an eye on that, and so that we can plan ahead when that bonds are going to be paid off, and will free up some debt capacity so we could fund pieces of the connector.
Thank you. We're at the top of the hour, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but I think we do have a minute for another question or two, if anybody has anything that they'd like to bring up. On the room. Okay. Well, guys, if there are none, I do want to take just a moment again to thank our legislative delegation for joining us this morning. Also want to particularly thank you, Delegate Marshall, for your service to our community, and appreciate your words to say, even though we will not fall in your district, we're still neighbors and certainly will continue to work together. And know that will be good. I do want to take just a minute to recognize our chamber champions, and without them, these types of programs would not be possible. So I'm going to go through and just thank Ameristaff. Obviously, we've already mentioned Appalachian Power, Axton Solar, B99.9, Blue Ridge Bank, BTW 21, Carter Bank and Trust, Community Foundation serving Western Virginia, Eastman, Epic Health Partners, the Lester Group, Jones and Deshawn Orthodontics, Martinsville Eye Care, Martinsville Smiles, Martinsville Speedway, Mountain Valley Hospice, New College Institute, the New Day Ministries, Oakdale Technologies, Phillips Group, Reed Electrical Associates, Results, S&K Office Products, Sarver Cleaning Services, Snyder Orthodontics, Southwestern Virginia Gas Company, Sova Health, the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and the West Piedmont Business Development Center. So again, I just want to take a moment this morning to thank those folks for their support. Without that, program such as this wouldn't be possible. So again, just want to close by thanking everybody for taking the time this morning. Appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to doing this again soon.
May I?
Certainly, Delegate Marshall, please.
May I have just about a minute?
Absolutely.
So this November is, we always say that this is an important election. Virginia's for Lovers. It ought to be Virginia's for Lovers of election. We have one, seems like every 6 months. But this November, we will elect all 140 members of the General Assembly. That's 40 members in the Senate and 100 members in the House. And so what I'm asking of you as members of the Chamber of Commerce is that to think about, that to not just locally, but you get your friends and family all over the Commonwealth to please get out and vote and think about commerce and about look at, there's a lot of different ratings from the state chamber, et cetera, and for other groups that to see how business friendly the delegates and senators candidates are out there. And please get out and vote this November, because this is a very important election in the direction of Commonwealth. So get your friends and family out to vote on business friendly issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Martin. We certainly would agree that you said all elections are important, but it does seem like this year's election, particularly for the Commonwealth and for the country, is an important one. So we would echo that as well.
And one thing that in Virginia, we have, we have a 4-year cycle. We have a 1 of 4. Voters are usually broken down. You have a 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 4 of 4. I'm a 4 of 4. That means I vote every election. A 1 of 4 only votes for presidential. 2 of 4 votes presidential and governor. So we're looking, really trying to find those 1 of 4s and 2 of 4s and get them out this November to a vote.
Sir. Okay. Well, guys, everybody, thank you again for joining us. We wish you a good day, and we'll all talk soon. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.